Very cool.
Very
Cheers.
Cool. Cheers. I'm John Yu with Sip Studies.
I'm Greg Cellars with Wine Blog with the Dog.
And today we're going to be starting our first podcast. We're going to be talking about our weekly wine tasting, but we also have our own adventures. Greg here has been starting his own blog. It's inspired me to do a lot on sipstudies.com to build the community, grow a lot of the content in a way where it reaches education on a different platform. Sip Studies is about beverage education and entertainment in a way that we're pushing a technological boundary.
What's cool about Sip Studies is I was a WSET2 student, probably 3-4 months ago when I came into Corey's in Las Vegas, and the Somms were doing a blind tasting. I met John that day and I was like, hey, I want to join this group. Totally cool. Every Sunday there's a different theme. Today was Earthy Reds. There's some amazing Somms in this group, and it's really a pleasure to be here.
Cool. No, this is an adventure for everybody. I mean, everybody, even if you're a master or you're intro, we're all learning. We're all trying to grow. Either we're keeping on par with our skill set, or we're exponentially growing. And one of the things that I love with Greg and Wine Blog with the Dog is like the historical aspect of it. He goes so deep into the context of every state, locally. It's something that I want to learn more about and kind of see how his both educational background as well as like his expertise in writing and blogging and communicating the ideas will really convey in our podcast.
John, a lot of people don't realize there's great winemakers in every state, including Hawaii and Alaska.
Yeah.
I think the Somms in Vegas get caught up with French, Old World, Italian, and they don't realize that there's hybrid grapes in Michigan and Ohio, Pennsylvania, and really, really great history there. The settlers and pioneers that came here early in the 1700s and 1800s and tried to establish vineyards and grapes. Of course, the polar vortexes prevented that until the hybrids were made. But a lot of those winemakers in those states will buy grapes and source grapes from like Lodi, high volume producers, and then blend and make really good original grapes. And of course, I'm looking for the winemakers that have a vineyard dog that greets all the customers as you come up, because I'm usually with Annie or Lucy, and I have my dogs rolling into the vineyard.
No, I love that. And that's the thing too, is like going deep into the history, into people's stories, into really like their own backyard is so intimate that you don't get that on a wine label. And we don't get the stories. But man, I'll tell you what, you ever go to a vineyard and you find out about your favorite winemaker and their background and their family history and how they created the industry, and it changes your perspective 100%. And you can't put that on a wine label.
Yeah, I just got back from Sonoma and the Sierra foothills of California, and they're all second, third, fourth generation winemakers. Grandpa started this in the 50s or the 70s, and then the son took over. Now it's the grandchildren that are running the day-to-day operations of actually making the wine. A lot of them in that area were like UC Davis, the agriculture crowd from UC Davis and viticulture. Just amazing families.
Even when I was doing some classes with AARP, one of the things when doing my own research, we realized that, and we've had conversations about this before, do you identify as a winemaker or do you identify as a grower? Especially like as a farmer, because the commodity itself is interchangeable. And what you do in the vineyard or what you do with the terroir, the ground, the soil, the water, that's way more important. And I love it because when I was going from state to state, whether it was Maryland, Colorado, New York, the perspective is drastically different, you know, and everybody's perspective is different. We've talked about, was it Augustine Herzog?
Yes.
I'm always bad at butchering his name. Herzog.
The Hungarian count, who actually was not a count. He gave himself that name to sell more wine.
He is one of those pioneers where it just went and made wine. And what did he do? He went to Europe and brought as many different, you know, species back as possible.
Yeah.
The entrepreneurial aspect of it is something that fascinates me. How to build wine.
Here's an interesting fact about him. He was the first sheriff of San Diego County when San Diego County was incorporated right after the gold rush, and then went up and bought all that property. Buena Vista is the historic vineyard, the first commercial vineyard in California. Totally a neat story.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, his untimely death was caused by...
An alligator.
Yes.
No,
No, he's still my hero.
Yeah.
He's my hero.
Well, anybody who loves American wine, I think he should be our hero because he brought it all. You know, I think only one other family. Well, I'll say two big families that I can like give major kudos to for bringing a lot of different species of Vitis vinifera in particular back to the United States. I'd say would be the Perrin family and also Dr. Constantine Frank family from Eastern Europe. Those families, both the Perrin and also the what is it called, Tablas Creek, like how they
They were the Rhone Rangers.
Rhone Rangers. They onboarded, quarantined, went through the whole laborious process of bringing in those Rhone varieties in order to have good quality wines from Chateau Beaucastel. That's beautiful, you know. And even like with Dr. Constantine Frank, like to think about like Arcatatelli, in my mind, I can't think of Arcatatelli and like Eastern European wine, orange wine, without thinking about their family. Like,
Yeah.
For me, that's Finger Lake and New York legacy that as we dive deeper into each state, I think we'll be able to kind of really embrace.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, Sip Studies, we looked at Eastern European wines. We had some Bulgarian wines here.
Yep.
We did a Cab Franc, a Cabernet.
Yep.
And people don't realize that wine's made everywhere. And made everywhere for at least 9,000 years, if not 100,000 years. Interesting.
Oh, one of the things too is like as you know, Gregory's like going through state by state. One of the things that I'm going to go through is the grape by grape. I'd love to talk about 6,000 grapes, dive into each grape, each Vitis vinifera, but also like other species, other rootstocks, see what grows best. Why do we use it? Why do we even need it? And also, like, is it even for wine? Maybe at some point we dive deeper into different fruits, not just grapes, but peaches, apricots, plum. Let's say we go and dive deeper into plum and then we make plum wine. Well, what do we do after we make plum wine? We make plum brandy. And so Schlivovitz is going to be a great example of that. So beverage as a whole commodity, it's always fascinating to be able to start with base fermentation. We make something, we find something that has sugar, we ferment it. Now we've got a wine or beer or let's say a pulque. And now we distill it. We go higher into that beverage category. And we can do it with so many commodities. We're just scratching the surface here with wine, you know, but wine is such a mystical, I don't know, like sometimes hard to approach commodity that we want to, I think, demystify it both for entry-level winemakers, wine enthusiasts, and also people who are in the industry who are looking to study wine.
It's interesting you use the word commodity because that's what it has been for thousands of years. They used to pay the Roman soldiers in wine. It was used for medicinal purposes, and it was also used for nutritional purposes. Water was bad.
Yes.
Back in the day, water was contaminated. And wine, they would mix with water, and you'd get a source of calories. You get your nutrition, In some sort.
Anyway.
Yes.
I'm no monastery monk, but I always love the idea of like being able to live off of the whole season off of beer.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It's enough calories to keep you going,
Yeah, and you talk about the Cistercian monks in like northern France back in the day when they were building stuff, Chateauneuf-du-Pape in more southern France.
Yeah, both, what is it? Yeah, even Franciscans, Cistercians, even like the architecture. That's something that I will eventually dive into, maybe more so on our blog, to really go after what is it that they built. Not just like exploring and navigating the terroir of these vineyards, but also like the homes, the cities, what makes, let's say, Dijon, right? It's in the heart of Burgundy, but at the same time, like, we don't talk about it as much. And for me, with an architectural background, it's something that I love. One of my favorite vineyards of all time is Rafael Lopez de Heredia, Viña Tondonia. Those guys are phenomenal. Maria Jose is a wonderful winemaker, but she's better yet, a wonderful storyteller. When she tells her family's stories, it is passionate, it's enthusiastic, and it's multifaceted. It's not just wine. We talked about architecture, we talked about building, we talked about philosophy, and the thing about it is that's the commodity. That is wine as a whole. It's not just the juice that we produce, it's everything. It is, in a sense, the terroir of everything that wine takes to become great is not just in the soil. It's not just the people. It's not just the environment or the culture. It's everything.
Yeah. Well, I love sipping wine with friends, but as a commodity, the wine really created trade routes from the very earliest of civilizations. And it was those trade routes where they were able, once they learned to bottle and package wine, and they could create corkage, it really opened up all those trade routes to Europe, from Egypt and Mesopotamia region. And then they're finding 5,000-year-old wineries and some caves there still today.
So we've got a lot to cover. We have so many things, so many ideas. We're going to script for you. We're going to make sure that we have our own interests and be able to carve out the story that we want to talk about, because there's so much to talk about, so much content we have to cover. Beautiful wines that we'll also be able to share. Again, we did earthy wines this week, anywhere from Chateauneuf-du-Pape, Bordeaux, Nebbiolo, and even Lodi Zin. We're going to go through it. Every now and then, we're going to talk about the wines. We'll dive deeper into that. We're going to also bring in some somms that are in our tasting group. Talk about their restaurants, their perspectives. Give you kind of the uncut, unedited version of, and unfiltered, I guess, version of what industry life is like in Las Vegas.
And what's cool is I'm not industry. I come from the education field, and I am in shock and awe how good these somms we have in this group are. And I think anybody that listens to some of their descriptions and some of their experiences, because they're dealing with selling wine every day at a high volume, high stress, Las Vegas, state-of-the-art, entertainment capital of the world venue. When we get F1 and we get Super Bowls and we get all these events, NASCAR next week, people come here and they want to taste great wines and go to some iconic restaurants and meet iconic chefs. Well, today we had 8 or 10 of some of the best somms at those restaurants.
And all over town too. I mean, they cover on the strip, off the strip. They're learning, they're masters, every platform, 3 different guilds coming together: Society of Wine Educator, Quartermaster Sommelier, and WSET.
What is the difference between those 3 guilds?
From my perspective, Society of Wine Educators is really a wonderful foundation. It's the backbone of what I encourage a lot of students to start off with, because it gives you an idea of how we learn wine, really deep dive into each category, wine, beer, spirits, and understanding how things come together. Also, kind of remove some of the fog of war of some commodities. Let's say, what is a vermouth? What is a bitter and aromatized spirit? What are bitters?
Yeah.
These are some of the more difficult
nuances of the industry.
yes, but also difficult topics to talk about. And when we organize stores and in the off-premise, when we work in a wine menu, it's hard to organize or sometimes hard to sell to the customer. Now, with Society of Wine Educator, that's a lot of where the communication is really key and the presentation and teaching. Now, when it comes to when it comes to WSET, how would you describe WSET?
I'm going to say it's more about history, regions, grape varietals, and pairings. Less on service. We have zero service. And our blind tasting is going to be much easier. We're going to describe the wine, but we are not going to tell you the region, the year, and the grape.
One of the things I always notice with WSET is it's almost like being a good author, diving deeper into the topic. It's really like what you're doing as well, where we're not necessarily focused on one winemaker or one producer that pioneered certain things. What we're looking at is market trends. We're looking at the region as a whole. What is avant-garde is something that we'll take note of, but there's a beautiful journalism about it. There's a beautiful element of communicating it. Somebody's got to write this stuff down, and that is a craft all on its own. And then we have Quartermaster Sommeliers, which is the third guild that we're going to predominantly talk about, which is going to be beverage and hospitality service. It's going to be the forefront of that is going to be customer service. It's going to be about being in restaurants and talking about the experience, whether setting wine menus up to organizing your cellars, inventory, things like that, that industry professionals, we want to bring to the forefront and talk to them about. And also, how does one navigate that? As we're growing in each different guild, you might not always want to be an educator. Maybe you're a sommelier at a restaurant. How do you grow from there? Do you want to become a food and beverage director? Do you want to become, a master mixologist? Do you want to switch commodities into spirits?
I totally agree. But like an athlete, you may want to cross-train. It's good to do some aerobics, it's good to do some weights, it's good to do some yoga and stretching. I love the well-roundedness, and when I'm here and able to hear and listen to fantastic somms from different guilds, and also look at your sheets you post us, because you give us the tasting sheets, I learn differently because you learn outside the box of the realm that you are training in, and it gives you a better perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally gives you. Although, with a retina problem with my eyes, I'm not going to pour wine for people.
That's okay.
And get hurt on that. So I don't want to do the service part.
That's all right. And I think at the same point too, each guild really does have their specialty.
Yeah.
I expect all our songs to be porn, but WSET, I expect you guys to be diving deeper, writing more.
Yes.
And if it's Society of Wine Educators, I'm also expecting flawed analysis. I'm expecting teaching and coaching on a different level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a great experience. Today was fantastic. The Earthy Reds, I just had a couple notes I wanted to tell you about. The first one, the Chateauneuf Pop.
Yeah. We
We had a couple somms that got the Grenache out of it.
Yeah.
They called Grenache right away. And we know that all of these are going to be dry, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure Brandon would agree that these are all less than 2 grams per liter.
Yeah.
I always tend to go a little higher. I think I get some residual sugar on some, but he's like, no, these are dry.
Yeah.
I believe his palate on that.
Okay.
We did some fantastic wines today.
Yeah.
Probably the one that was the shocker was the Clinker Brick
Yeah.
from Lodi.
I loved that one. That was the one that I got because it was red fruit, black fruit. It was uneven ripening with like amazing amount of dill. I mean, the amount that people were picking up on the oak was like very impressive. It's unique in its category, and we did a lot of old world wines. So tasting that, as well as we did a Cab Franc as well earlier from Lodi. Those pop, man. Those stand out. Velvety texture, like viscosity, richness, alcohol was just really iconic.
But the aromatic portion of it was so different too. We were getting some leather, some forest floor, some barnyard, but a couple of them were fruit forward, which threw me way off. The topic was earthy reds.
Yep.
I thought we had a couple of the reds that were fruit forward, and that's what got me, was the juicy jamminess of a couple of them.
We had some stinky ones too. The Ramon Bilbao was impressive with our group. There was a little bit of reduction, a little bit of lack of oxidation.
Oh, tons of reduction.
It was just a wild wine. The Accardi for me, the Longa Nebbiolo, was really cool because it showed a really multifaceted approach to Nebbiolo. You know, I was going for Barbaresco, Barolo, a little more structure when I was blinding it, but a lot of people noticed how fruity it was, and again, the aromatic structure of it was very lively. So overall, we did have a really creative selection of wine this week.
I was looking at the Rioja. The Rioja had, to me, that reduction. And Brandon explained the reduction, but to me it was corrosive battery. And I also wrote down, it was like burnt wax or something. And it may have been because we went from fruity, fruit forward, and I smelled it, I was like, oh my God, this is burnt something. But it was really fun today. Really a fun day with red, which are my favorites.
Yeah, you do have a love for that.
Yeah, I know. We're going to do neutral whites next week.
Yeah, that's true.
And those are a little harder for me, the neutrals. And
I think it's going to be a challenge for everyone. I know Amy mentioned it was going to be one of her biggest obstacles. I'm excited to see what's going to come out of our tasting.
Yeah, so for our listeners, I wish we could give the wines. You ordered them from Corey's,
right?
And you taste along with us.
So
it's at one point.
So just as a heads up, we do tasting at Corey's Fine Wine over in Henderson, Nevada. And one of the things about it is Issa Corey has always been a wonderful host for our tasting groups. We've been able to grow tremendously in this venue, and honestly, we're going to see a lot more evolution. We might even split off into two tables, show you the intro level, show you an advanced level, and dive deeper into how we're learning and how we're growing. But we're going to pivot a lot. We're going to change a lot of that.
Wineblogwiththedog.com went to Paso right before Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that every winemaker in Paso knows Issa.
No way.
Yeah, Herman's Story Issa makes
no way.
He makes a couple of blends here from Herman's Story and Desperata.
Yeah.
But not only them, he sells all of these wines on this road right here. A lot of them are from Paso.
Yeah.
He sells Dow. He sells Tobin James. Listen, Tobin James is about as fun as wineries you're ever going to visit.
I heard it's a party.
No, it is as fun. And those Zins are amazing.
Yeah.
And they're very affordable. You're getting Zins for $22 to $30 that have a lot of really great oak influence. And just a fun place to visit.
I love it.
They're great people there. Yeah.
No,
Let me throw in one more plug for Paso.
Yeah, for sure.
Tin City is an area they've made in the warehouse district. Super chic. They're not farmers, but they're winemakers, so they source all their grapes. There must be 15 or 20 wineries in there. Turtle Rock, Aaron, Desperata, Onyx. It's amazing. Those wines are dang good.
And what's it called again?
Tin City.
Tin City.
Tin City. And in fact, if you look up Tin City, like on Prime Video or something, there's videos on Tin City. I think it just started like in 2012.
Yeah.
So it's really new. But they also have cider. breweries, and some great restaurants. Olive oils as well.
Yeah.
Great dog-friendly place.
I like it. I
Yeah.
like it. Well, we've got a lot to cover, so we'll get scripting. We're gonna write about it. We're gonna figure out basically the world that we're gonna portray for you, because we have a lot of territory. Both every state, 6,000 grapes. We get a lot to talk about.
Every state, 6,000 grapes. Can I hold you to that?
Yeah. Keep me accountable.
Cheers, my brother.
Cheers.
Cheers.